Okay, welcome to N20 Adventures. N20 stands for not too old, yet at least. This is just going to be a little follow-up video to my earlier one on my tyre experience on the 790 Adventure R. Last time I covered quite a wide range of tyres and mentioned at the end that I'd do a bit more of a follow-up once I'd had a bit more miles on the Motoz Motoz, depending on how you pronounce it, Motoz Desert HT. So I've now done, on this tyre here, I've done about just over 2,000 Ks. So for me that's a lot to get out of a rear tyre, even ones that they say last a long time. So this one here, I'll do some close-up photos which I'll post at the end of the video, but I would say this one's about half used at the moment. And if you haven't watched the earlier video, I'll just give you a bit of a rundown on how I ride. I tend to do a lot of gravel roads, backcountry, and a little bit of the hard adventure style of things in muddy, slippery terrain. Generally ride on traction control rally mode 1. So no real intervention there from traction control, so I do give tyres a fairly hard time. But you can kind of watch some of the videos, you'll get an idea of how I ride. And my sort of overall impressions of this tyre would be that probably does exactly what it says on the tin when you read the Motoz website. It is a desert tyre, so I would say its strengths would be in sandy terrain, dry dirt, and rocky terrain. You're going to get good longevity out of it. It's not bad mannered on the road for a very knobbly tyre, although I would say it's extremely noisy. Even by knobbly standards, it's noisy on the road. And good manners in the dry. Obviously you're going to be pretty slippy in the wet because it's a harder compound, so you've got to take it pretty tentative on the wet, greasy roads. But in the dry, not too bad. You can push it and it doesn't seem to suffer too much for the fact that you're pushing it. And it is a reasonably predictable tyre, which is probably one of the things I really look for, because you don't expect a real knobby tyre to be good on the road. Just look for predictability, and it is that. But I'd say as a tyre, like I've just posted up some videos on a ride called One Big Day, which was for me 776 kilometres, gravel backcountry, bit of dirt forestry roads, and some deep wet bush that we get here in New Zealand. So that's wet grass with a clay base, and deep bush with some pine needles and debris on the ground and slippery clay underneath. So very challenging conditions for a big adventure bike. And you're always going to struggle to find a tyre that does really well on a big adventure bike without going full motocross tyres, which is funnily enough where I'm going to end up for those types of rides. I'd say this one overall in the gravel, I'm not impressed with it in the gravel. It doesn't have a lot of lateral traction for sideways movement, so it tends to be very, very skiddy. Even in a straight line, it's relatively skiddy compared to, for say, Motoz Tractionator Adventure is a much better tyre on the gravel, as I assume the rally tyre would be, although I haven't actually run that tyre yet. So I'd say it's not a tyre I'm going to run again. I've run 2 of them now, so this is the second one. So I've given them a good workout, and it's not a tyre I'd pick for my kind of riding in New Zealand. I think if you're doing the South Island, which is a much more rocky terrain, probably a good choice for that. But in the mud it doesn't clear very well. In those One Big Day challenge parts of the video you can actually see how much it blocks up the tyre. And I have since removed the rear hugger, so I've made a new mud flap in there to try and reduce the issue of the back tyre getting packed with mud and locking the back tyre, which is a problem I had in the One Big Day, which makes it very difficult going downhill, and of course affects your traction uphill as well. The other tyre I've got on here, which I might as well say a bit about while I'm here, Let's move the bike over a little bit. So the other tyre I've got on here is the Mitas C21 Stone King on the front. I'll post a photo of that as well. So that's done the same amount of mileage as the rear tyre, same terrain, and I don't thrash it on the road, but I certainly get along a little bit and don't try to save the knobbly tyre on the road. So the front I'm extremely impressed with. It's my second one of these now. It's showing very little wear signs at all after all that time now. So yeah, good 2,000 Ks, probably a bit more. And I had a few hours, 3-hour ride averaging about 100 Ks an hour as I was coming back from the one big day because I was late for a friend's 40th. So I gave it a bit of a punishing, and it shows no ill effects from that at all. Still relatively square edge blocks. Was very good in the mud, and it's great in gravel. Just about any surface I found it to be good on. Predictable on the road. A little bit slippery in the wet, but overall pretty good in the wet on the road. Much better than the Desert HT. So it's quite rideable in the wet. Didn't lose traction in it, although I take it pretty tentative in the wet, as most people should with a pretty knobbly tyre. So that'll probably be my go-to front tyre now. I can't see myself moving away from that one in a hurry. And probably the most impressive Mitas tyre I've run. Probably next up for me will be, I've got some narrow power parts rims coming in, hopefully in the next week or so. So I'll be changing to the narrower rims, and then I'm going to do a bit more experimenting with some of the tyres. So probably be trying a Mitas C18 on the back, which is more of an enduro tyre. So we'll give that a try out and see how that goes in the slippery stuff, but I'm expecting some pretty good things out of that. Interesting to see how long they last, but I'm guessing not long. So that's sort of the update on this. These tyres, to follow on from that last one I did. So overall, yep, the Mitas C21 was great. Motoz, probably wouldn't run that again unless I was going down the South Island of New Zealand, which is very, very rocky, lots of shale rock. Potentially I'd run it again then. This is the 150, so the only comments I would say that may change or influence what you might think of them is I was riding on the one big day with a guy on a 690 and some guys on 701s. When following the 690 on the gravel, he was running the Desert HT as well. He didn't seem to have the traction issues that I had on the 790. Tracked a lot straighter, didn't seem to get the lateral sideways movement that I was experiencing. And yes, granted, I've got a lot more weight and horsepower to try and put down to the ground, but it was noticeably better, I thought, for him because he was moving along. And I think you can actually see that in what one? I think it's called Puriroa Forest through to Tamaranui. In the video there, at one point in there, I'm following him on the 690, and it's he's definitely able to go a lot straighter out of the corners than I was able to. Very good rider, so it may have been rider skill, I suppose, but definitely seemed to track better on the narrower profile tyre. So that'd be something to think about if you're running a narrow profile tyre. Potentially you're going to get better performance out of that once you're in gravel and potentially even the mud. But I think the biggest problem in the muddy, slippery conditions and clay is that it doesn't clear very well because the rubber's quite stiff and the carcass is quite stiff, so you're not getting that flex to help flick the mud out. So that's my tyre experience. If you've got any comments or want to ask me any questions that I haven't covered, chuck them in the comments, and I will endeavour to answer those for you. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you like this, hit the like button, and if you want to see more of my content, please subscribe. It'd be much appreciated. Thank you very much. Alright, cheers. Bye. So we've just got the couple of images of the tyre coming up now. So this is the rear Motoz Desert HT, see it wears pretty even and pretty good wear life as well. So that's about half worn, so still a lot of tread left. And then the Mitas front tyre. The only thing that really wears on them a bit unusually is the second row in from the outer edge. That there tends to get some odd shaped knobs after pushing them on the road. And I'll put some links in the description that links out to the One Big Day videos if you want to go and watch how these tyres perform. Cheers.